girls, assorted pronouns. Welcome back to DEGREELESSNESS, the world's most wretched hive of entitlement and toxic gamer culture. I'm your host, Shanghai Pete, and before we get started, let's do just a real quick recap of the week, which predictably was another unstoppable plague of madness in reality-defying proportions. First up, we've got GameStop continuing to insist that their archaic business model is not slowly destroying the company, and that laying off a third of your management staff is totally normal and no cause for concern. Normally, I'd find the slow, drawn-out, agonizing demise of GameStop kind of boring at this point and prefer it to just be over. However, as someone who used to manage a GameStop and has been directly subjected to the abusive and harmful way that they treat their employees, I am in fact delighted to be a spectator to their suffering for as long as possible. Hooray! Fuck you, GameStop. In other news, filed under I couldn't possibly give less of a fuck, popular children's entertainer, blue-haired clown, and basically the 2019 version of Big Bird, Ninja, is at it again. Apparently, he's left Twitch, which, for those of you who don't know, Twitch is a popular PG-13 camgirl site that occasionally features people playing video games as well. Anyway, Ninja is going to be streaming exclusively on the Microsoft-owned competitor, Mixer, from now on. From what I've heard, Mixer is more for playing games than it is for like holding an Xbox controller and insisting you're not a cam girl, so to me this sounds, that's probably a sensible move for him, being somebody that plays video games. Especially considering that the check Microsoft cut him is rumored to be in excess of $10 million fucking dollars. Now, in my personal opinion, streaming is one of the worst things about modern day social media culture to ever infect video games, and it raises people who are supplicative, beta, and encourages an attitude of, oh, everybody with a certain amount of followers is a celebrity, let's worship at the altar of their cult of personality. I think it's fucking disgusting, and while I'll never knock anyone's hustle, and I support people getting their money any way they can, forgive me if even talking about streaming or streamers makes me want to gouge out my fucking eyes. Ooh, this is a fun one. Looks like the ESA fucked up and allowed the personal info of over 2,000 journalists, industry people, and stuff like that to be leaked via their E3 website. Now, as tragic as this is, there's really nothing surprising here. Of course, the ESA treated the personal sensitive info of other people with a callous and reckless disregard for the security. Of course, they're trying to deflect and deny responsibility. And of course, mainstream media puppets are supporting their narrative and trying to shift the blame anywhere possible. And finally, of course, no one is offering any sort of recompense or a sincere apology. File this one under news, but not really. Lastly, this week, and I hate feeling that I need to talk about this kind of shit, but Lastly, this week marked the 254th mass shooting this year in the States. And right after that, not even 24 hours later, was the 255th. And not even 8 days before that, there were 3 others. I don't like talking about this shit. It's awful. But more importantly, because it's clear that no one really fucking cares, and that capitalism and profit at the expense of all else, even human lives, continue to be the true masters of our country. The president and others can't even be bothered to remember the name of the cities this happens in now. And of course, predictably, the mainstream media and everyone else is hard at work finding things to blame this on that won't affect any of their revenue sources. So naturally, they're blaming video games again. This is nothing new. It doesn't matter how much science there is proving video games are completely unrelated to this horror, they'll always be an easy scapegoat and an easy way to keep the attention off other possible causes that these people would rather you not look at. New additions to the find things to blame that have nothing to do with the problem list this time around are gay people and even our good buddy marijuana. I don't really have anything to add to this conversation that hasn't been said before. Like when you sell products at Walmarts that have no purpose other than to murder people, and you have a government controlled by corporations that directly profit from their sale, I don't know. I don't really know what you expect. So spare me the manufactured horror, fake outrage, insincere calls for action. Let me know when someone actually tries to get something done. In the meantime, I guess we'll just have to get better at ducking or buy a bulletproof vest, because people tweeting about how upset they are and how sad this makes them isn't going to save your life the next time some psychopath opens up with an assault rifle while you're out getting fucking groceries. Anyway, moving on, our main story tonight is about the truly bizarre trend of gamers being treated like enemy antagonists by game publishers and journalists. They all seem to have this attitude of, we get to do whatever we want and you're not allowed to criticize us for it. This kind of thing has echoes all over the media in general. It's been going on for a little while now, and the parallels between all of them are just insane. I mean, look at television, movies, comic books. becomes pretty clear that there's a disturbing trend building of companies treating their fans like enemies and something to be triumphed over. Now, as you might suspect, there is one event in particular, though, that really got me thinking about this more recently, and also happens to be patient zero for the current disaster responsible for dragging the video game industry to record-setting new lows. Yep, you guessed it, it's the fucking whack jobs behind a game called We Couldn't Decide Whether to Rip Off Pokemon or Animal Crossing, so we just copied both. Or, for the sake of clarity, OOBLETS. They were the latest unfortunate victims of Epic Games' bribery and coercion campaign that left their game on the wrong side of the PC exclusivity wall and the developers the targets of some much-needed criticism. Not harassment, criticism. Okay? Just so we're clear. Now, to be fair, not all of this was Epic's fault. Of course, my personal opinion is that both the Epic Game Store and Steam can go directly to hell, but that aside, if you as a developer do choose to take the money, you are then left with a choice. How do you approach announcing what is guaranteed to be a very unpopular decision? Do you try to force feed your fans disingenuous and obviously insincere drivel that reads like it was written by a lawyer? Or do you write up an honest and transparent statement that your fans and community deserve? One that maybe, I don't know, offers an authentic and humble apology along with a direct explanation of why it was necessary for your small, privately owned indie studio to reluctantly accept the funding and support it desperately needed when it was offered, and hope that your community respects your sincerity and candor. Well, if you're these guys, you do neither and instead choose the hidden third option, which has you feed your loyal community one of the most condescending, insulting, and disrespectful loads of bullshit I fucking have ever seen. Then, for extra points, you double down and continue to belittle, attack, and disrespect the people who have been funding your company and are guilty of nothing except giving you their money and wanting to play your game. Now, I know technically this wasn't a crowdfunded game, but they do have a huge list of Patreon supporters. Now, to be clear, I don't give a fuck about any of these people, I don't give a fuck about what they said, and I certainly don't give a fuck about whatever derivative Nintendo knockoff game that they're making. No one needs yet another video where I describe exactly what happened and then say the people involved are assholes. We all know what happened, and anyone capable of empathy knows that they're assholes, so fuck all that. What I care about is how this is really the latest example of a very strange trend that we've been seeing in gaming for a while now. This is nothing new, of course, but the severity of this latest debacle has really been making me think. Like, what the fuck is it with developers and journalists versus customers all of a sudden? What possible benefit could there be in directly antagonizing your customers and fans? Like, I'm honestly not sure what the end game is here. Do all these developers and journalists think they're just going to be able to endlessly insult, demean, smear, lie about, and attack the very people that make up most of their audience forever with no repercussions? What's the plan here, guys? Are these huge publishers just greedily chasing easy, short-term profits and dragging mainstream media along for the ride because they're forced to support them and shill for them? I guess it's a possibility, but I have a hard time imagining how you get to be a billion-dollar company if you don't understand a basic financial concept like the inherent dangers of sacrificing long-term growth for short-term profits. So, what the fuck are these people thinking? How is this sustainable? Aren't they losing money? I mean, yeah, sure, we've seen a few examples of get woke, go broke like Battlefield 5, but not near as many as I would expect. And with the exception of a few newer titles and maybe Modern Warfare, all I see is signs that this is going to continue and certainly not get better. Instead of backing off in the face of what I assume must be overwhelming pushback from customers, it seems like most of these companies are actually doubling down on this antagonistic behavior. Like, if Burger King makes a dumb commercial that pisses people off, they immediately reverse course and shit themselves apologizing. One person complains about a shoe design, and Nike folds and cancels it the same day. But, oh, God forbid if people hate The Last Jedi or politely voice their concern about not being able to purchase a game that they've funded, they're called toxic, personally insulted, and then villainized by an army of corrupt journalists. How did attack, insult, and publicly demean your customers become a sustainable business strategy? And like, you know, I don't get it fucked up. I'm not asking why companies are posting that kind of shit on social media. We all know how much traffic and clicks are generated by virtue signaling, hate bait, and woke posturing. I mean, that's not a mystery. The mystery is how that behavior is apparently not having an effect on their profits and why it seems to be continuing and in many cases getting worse. Now, it's expected that a company may occasionally say the wrong thing, phrase a public statement poorly, but the consistency in the negative and insulting way they've been communicating with customers, it's got to be intentional. It has to be. Now, of course, I'm not retarded. We all know that the only reason a company or corporation ever treats a customer like a human being or with even a modicum of respect or dignity is because they want your money. So do they not want our money anymore? Are microtransactions really so obscenely profitable that they no longer need to care if we hate them? Did they discover some perverse alchemical process that transmutes woke points earned by virtue signaling on social media into actual currency? Like, what sort of dark magic is happening here? Like, what the fuck? What's happened that's caused these huge corporations to abandon a time-honored philosophy like the customer is always right in favor of something more modern like shut the fuck up and buy our shit or we'll have Kotaku call you a Nazi? There's a few reasons I can think of this may be the case, so I mean, let's chop it up and see if we can figure it out. Now, my first theory is that it's simply too soon to expect the complete truth and reality of what's going on to filter down to the majority of the gaming public. Especially considering that most of these big companies have all the mainstream media outlets covering video games in their pockets already. They bribe and coerce them into ensuring that the narrative of all their coverage frames gamers negatively and perpetuates the image of developers as the innocent victims. I mean, sure, people like us who are really into gaming and have been for a while, we know what's going on, but remember how huge and mainstream gaming is these days. I don't know what percentage of the average gaming public people like you and I make up, but it's probably pretty fucking small comparatively. And while we get our gaming news from independent commentators whose only loyalty is to their audience and the truth, you gotta imagine that the majority of the gaming public doesn't. I mean, if anything, they probably read garbage like IGN or Polygon. So, considering that, it's easy to imagine that most people who buy video games have no fucking clue what's actually going on and how we're being treated as customers. They don't know that the companies behind the games they're buying are some of the foulest, most vile and amoral examples of the late-stage capitalism in all of human history. They don't know that they're handing over their hard-earned money to corporations that regularly insult and smear them, or that most of the games that they're buying aren't so much games as they are tools designed to infiltrate people's homes and expose their families to sinister, psychologically manipulative software designed to rob them. And that anyone who dares to voice concerns or criticism regarding these abusive and ethically vacuous business practices is systematically targeted and slandered by agents of those same companies masquerading as professional journalists. So maybe that's it, right? Maybe the consumer base is just too big and gaming too mainstream for enough people to know what's going on. And those of us that do, we don't represent a high enough percentage of that customer base to create any real noticeable effect on the bottom line of these companies when we don't buy their shit. So, from my perspective, I mean, it certainly seems like a lot of people are aware of this already, but I try to remind myself that just because all my friends and the content creators I watch know about this shit, it doesn't mean your average PlayStation owner does. Though developers like EA seem to be getting away with this now, perhaps it's only a matter of time until awareness of their conduct reaches a critical mass. A couple more high-profile fuck-ups, a few more monstrous crimes against humanity, and eventually the consumer outrage will be large enough to have a financial impact so severe that it'll force companies like EA and Activision to react. I mean, maybe we just gotta wait. It's only a matter of time until they piss off enough people to cause a problem. Another possibility is that for all the pushback and condemnation we see of companies like Rockstar, Take-Two, BioWare, whoever, none of it is actually translating into revenue loss. Maybe our impressions of how widespread and ubiquitous the outrage is against these developers is accurate, but it just stops at the internet. This wouldn't entirely surprise me either. The hive mind and mob mentality on display everywhere on the internet kind of speaks for itself. Most people have been brainwashed into doing and saying absolutely anything on the internet that they think will get them clicks, likes, retweets, followers, attention, whatever. As evidenced with mortifying clarity by the millions of videos and photos featuring people doing stuff like eating Tide Pods, putting their mouths on food and putting it back on the shelf, playing in traffic, leveraging intimate details about their personal lives for attention and sympathy, whatever, standard 2019 shit, right? So it would hardly be shocking to discover that among the legions of content creators and social media characters voicing concerns about what's happening to our industry, the vast majority of them are still busting out the Epic Game Store and punching in credit card numbers after they turn off the camera. I mean, after all, most people are fucking cowards and don't want to risk the social consequences of not having the hot new Fortnite skin or whatever garbage Call of Duty is selling people, I don't know, a reticle. Maybe everyone just sucks. Now, the last thing I can think of is one that unfortunately makes a whole shitload of sense in present day, and that is, maybe everyone really is this fucking stupid. I'd like to think that this isn't very likely, but in the waking dystopian nightmare that is present day, you gotta assume anything is possible. You always hear excuses like, oh, they just didn't know, or oh, they're just stupid. It's run by old businessmen who don't understand anything about this. And generally speaking, I usually feel like those kind of excuses are almost never true. Becoming an international globe-spanning corporation worth billions of dollars is not fucking easy. Doesn't happen by accident. Activision and EA aren't where they are now because they have stupid people running shit. Usually quite the opposite. Never make the mistake of thinking that companies like this do not know what they are doing. I promise you they do. Or at the very least they think they do. The possibility that you may have thought of something or had an idea or considered an angle or a course of action regarding anything that they have not is just about zero. Anytime you think, oh, why don't they just do X? It would make so much sense. How did they not think of this? They did think of it, it doesn't make sense, and they're not doing it because they're smarter than you and they have access to information that you do not. Companies this size have access to the most advanced metrics and data harvesting operations ever conceived of. There really is not much that they aren't aware of. The explanation is almost never, oh, that was an accident. I mean, that isn't to say that a company like Epic never makes mistakes. Everybody is human. Of course they do. I'm just saying that the mistakes they do make usually require multiple MBAs or a law degree to comprehend, and almost never could have been avoided had they just asked you or your YouTube channel what to do instead. However, all that being said though, their attitude towards their customers lately is so fucking incomprehensible that maybe they really don't know what the fuck they're doing. Maybe they've gotten so caught up in the weird Ouroboros that is the games industry these days that they really just can't see that they're chasing current social media trends and cultural dogma off a fucking cliff. I mean, it's just another side effect of the collapse of traditional media, I guess. And since everything is hell, the whole situation is magnified and distorted by the sick, warped lens of the internet. A simple disagreement about the merits and flaws of a video game or a movie inevitably devolves into a public tribal conflict and Marxist power struggle. Throw in a few thousand jeering spectators and watch as everyone is worked into a blind frenzy, fueled by the 24-hour news cycle of pay-per-click outrage and team-sponsored hate bait. These days, instead of just having a game, people who like the game, and people who do not like the game, instead we have teams and everyone has to choose one, and if you don't choose a team, you're going to be put on one. It's no longer about a game and why it's good or bad, it's about my team versus your team. Kotaku versus the gamers. Polygon versus you. Everyone on the other team is the bad guy and all that matters is that they lose. Welcome to 2019, where the internet has driven humanity completely insane and civil discussion and polite discourse have been abandoned in favor of ravenous, ignorant tribalism and regressive virtue signaling. Twitter and social media have everyone ceaselessly putting on a performance in which they star as a horrifying parody of themselves, dragged out of some nightmare dimension. We all know this, yet we pretend that we don't. So, given all this, what are we left with? Well, the optimistic conclusion is that on a long enough timeline, the attitude that these developers, publishers, journalists, and shit have towards customer interaction will eventually infuriate and outrage so many people that the effect on their bottom line will be impossible to ignore, and something will change, hopefully for the better. The cynical and realistic conclusion, however, is that the effect the internet and social media culture have on people is so widespread and pernicious that even those in charge of shepherding the profits of a multi-billion-dollar company are blinded by it. I mean, shit, they are some of the first CEOs that have ever been subjected to direct and unfiltered customer interaction before. Maybe being forced to hear the truth about their disgusting, inhuman company really is driving them insane, and they'll continue to chase likes and social media approval straight into bankruptcy and destitution. We can only hope, right? In the meantime, I'll be over this way with my torrent client. Let me know when you guys decide to stop insulting and attacking your customers, and maybe I'll consider giving you my money again. Until then, suck a dick. Yikes, what a horrifying episode today. You know, it's really a bizarre time to be alive. On one hand, you've got some great shit happening, like legal weed and TV shows like Action Bronson watching Ancient Aliens. So now you realize that now not only can you get high and watch Ancient Aliens, you can also get high and watch Action Bronson get high and watch Ancient Aliens. That's pretty amazing. On the other hand, you have kids afraid of being cut down in a hail of bullets during science class, companies using journalists to attack and slander their customers, and reality in general looking more like an episode of Black Mirror than anything else. I have no idea what the fuck is going on, but I'm pretty sure none of us are going to survive it. Anyway, that's our show. Thanks for chilling with us, those of you who did. We love you today. We love you all the way. Don't forget to dislike this video. Go ahead and leave an angry and ignorant comment down below and subscribe to any channel other than this one. Now, I've got to go because there's an owl in my window staring at me. But I know it's not an owl.